So let's talk about ESPN and their Pat McAfee problem. This is now turning into a big deal. Exposés in the Washington Post. Many front office sports, I think, had it. Many outlets are reporting what we've talked about for the last couple of weeks, and that is that there is friction with Pat McAfee at ESPN. Reports say that ESPN staffers are upset with the lack of editorial control over Pat McAfee, and that the Washington State comments damage Pat McAfee with in-house people at ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
And the bigger thing here with Pat is that Pat isn't an employee at ESPN. You need to understand, because this is really important. Pat McAfee is a license to which ESPN bought, which means Pat McAfee is licensing his name, image, and likeness to ESPN for what some are putting at $50 million a year. They are paying Pat. What did you say today? It's somewhere on the order of $17 million just for the Pat McAfee show.
Just to license the Pat McAfee show is somewhere between $15 and $17 million a year.
So as part of that license, they don't have editorial control over the show. To the extent that, does Pat curse in hour 1 and 2? They really don't, outside of the S word. But one of the major rubs at ESPN and one of the major frustrations is Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers will not go on ESPN outside of the Pat McAfee show.
Mm-hmm.
And staffers are really upset that Pat McAfee admitted on his show that he's paid Aaron Rodgers over $1 million. And that ESPN is now facilitating that relationship, rubbed a lot of internal staffers the wrong way. And then you start looking at the way that he talked about Washington State, rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
The Aaron Rodgers segment with the vaccines and the comments around them. ESPN employees are not allowed to talk about that stuff on ESPN. But Pat McAfee has free license to do so. So you can see where not being able to rein in Pat McAfee's a problem. The other frustration is amongst big name talent, other big name talent, that he gets every ESPN staffer to appear on his show as part of his agreement. He gets Adam Schefter. He gets, you name the personality.
Yeah.
And you see that the quarterback, Dan Orlovsky. Thank you. Dan Orlovsky appears every week on the Pat McAfee show. And part of their frustration is Woj does not appear on the Pat McAfee show because Sham Charania appears every week on the Pat McAfee show, which frustrates ESPN staffers. There's this a no-win situation for ESPN because he gets special treatment and he gets an incredible amount of money. And I just don't see how ESPN fixes this.
Yeah, well, I think ESPN fixes it by figuring out how they would ever replace Pat McAfee's demographic that he brings, because all the reporting is saying that ESPN is thrilled with the demo that Pat brings, 18 to 34, that he dominates that space, that he's done what he said he would do in terms of bringing that age group to view ESPN product. So Pat, in that sense, is doing his job. But I think the hard part for ESPN when we talk about doing something about it,
wait. We're watching the Toronto Maple Leafs Washington Capitals game.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Matthews, who's the best player on the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
What just appeared on the bottom of the screen?
I don't know. I didn't see it.
Austin Matthews will appear on the Pat McAfee show tomorrow morning at this time.
Did it really?
Yes. I mean, it is remarkable. And this is, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I mean,
one of the guys I talked to at ESPN was telling me this is part of the frustration with the Pat McAfee show. They promote him on every single thing that they do. They promote the Pat McAfee show. And it's frustrating to certain ESPN talent that he is getting Austin Matthews promotion on an NHL game.
Yeah, well, think about what ESPN's done here. ESPN's basically said, okay, we don't have talent that brings in the demo we want, and we want to get younger. We know we need to get younger. So Pat McAfee, of course, is never going to become an employee again, because why would you? Just on premise alone if you're him. So what did ESPN do? Okay, we're going to sign you as a contractor, and we're not going to make you an employee. The agreement's going to stipulate, though, that we can put all of our talent on there, and we're basically just going to run through your show. That's what we're going to do with your show. And so ESPN's thought and logic clearly here is, hey, if we put Austin Matthews on Pat McAfee's show tomorrow after he's had, before this game, 2 hat tricks in a row, we can then promote the Frozen Frenzy, which Pat talked about a gazillion times today on his show, which is a new, basically, NHL Red Zone model that they've rolled out where you can see all 32 teams in action, all the goals,
on
yada, yada, yada. On ESPN2.
On ESPN2 with John Butchergross?
Exactly. And Butchergross went on Pat's show in a tank top. It was viral. So make no mistake about this. I hope people understand this. ESPN on the business side loves Pat McAfee because he brings them a certain thing that they prioritize at a high level.
Yep. Pat
McAfee likes Pat McAfee a lot.
Yes.
And Pat McAfee is difficult to work with in some ways. And so it causes strife. So when we talk about what's ESPN going to do about it, well, if you want to be able to leverage Pat McAfee, how do you leverage someone that isn't an employee? Well, we're going to replace you in this way. But ESPN can't do that. So now ESPN is truly in a no-win situation. So ESPN is not going to go to Pat.
And supposedly on his show today, he threatened ESPN and talked about how there's traitors in his ranks. And that, I mean, it's already ugly.
Yeah, he said he said to the suits at ESPN who got the New York Post to write a damning article of me, your time will come.
Yeah.
And you don't do that. And that's why I say Pat McAfee does
So don't skip the lead there, though. What did you say right there?
That he went after the suits at ESPN.
Because they had the New York Times write a negative article about him.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're playing games, man.
And staffers at ESPN spoke openly to the Washington Post. Mm-hmm. And there is a Vanity Fair article coming. And again, I think there was a front office sports piece. Like, this is ugly now.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get rid of Pat McAfee. You're not. You have a contract with him. It's $50 million a year. Now, there are some people who are fighting hard to not have him on game day next year.
Sure.
And he has talked about that as well. And I think there's an opportunity that he may not be on game day next year. But the Pat McAfee show is doing too well. It is bringing too many viewers. It is bringing too many big names. Look at all the quarterbacks they have on that show. Look at all the NFL players. Look at Shams. Look at Schefter. Look at Dan. Look at, they've had Greeny on their show. JJ Watt's every week on their show. Nick Saban's every week on their show. But Nick Saban won't go on SportsCenter after games.
No.
Which pisses off SportsCenter.
Yeah. And that's the trouble. It's as usual, a situation where Pat knows everybody. And most people like Pat who are in the sports world because he's a bro. He's a bro. He knows how to talk football. In my opinion, the Pat McAfee show completely exposed themselves with that Shams interview.
Oh.
They have no idea what they're talking about in the NBA.
Yeah.
No idea who certain players are. Like,
yeah.
I don't know, man. If you're ESPN, you're in a rock and a hard place. And I understand why staffers at ESPN are pissed about this. I totally get it. I understand it. Pat gets special treatment. And I do think that ESPN overexposes Pat. I'd have no problem with Austin Matthews going on Pat McAfee's show tomorrow if I didn't get slapped in the face 18 times a week with Pat McAfee.
He's on, and one of the other things that a guy at ESPN told me is there's frustration. Like, if you go to any NFL article on ESPN, you're going to see a Pat McAfee video.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough to get away from. So what do you guys think? Do you side with ESPN? Do you side with Pat McAfee? Like, where do you guys come down on this? James, Oak State fan, Pat McAfee's show during the week is really good. I just don't want him on game day. Please bring back David Pollack. Well, there's some thought on that too.
I don't know. That's not going to happen, dude.
Yep. Gary Wolf says Pat McAfee. That was
McAfee, dude.
McAfee. Salty Drunk for $2.99 Australian. Did you see that BuckedUp's in Melbourne? I sent it to you on Instagram. BuckedUp's in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. Hope we're still mates. Why would we not? Oh, because you haven't sent us our Forex Gold, which is your new logo now.
I don't really get it.
Well,
yeah, I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, we probably should not talk about you welching on your bets, sir. Jim Choi, more power to ESPN. McAfee brings down ESPN. Does he, though?
Well, I think that what you can say definitively is Pat has had his fair share of bad articles in the short time he's been with ESPN. And I think what Pat doesn't understand is when you go to ESPN and you partner with them, because you shouldn't say he went there, he partnered with them as a contractor. Dude, you got to understand that you got to come to the middle a little bit. I'm not saying he's got to change his whole show or like change
Put on a shirt, jerk.
Yeah, like he's never going to do that. But you can't look like a complete moron talking about the NBA and contract extensions.
They had Shams on today from Stadium, and they were trying to talk NBA, and they had no idea what they were talking about. And it's part of the reason I think Woj doesn't like going on their show.
Pat McAfee had never heard of Jaden McDaniels of the T-Wolves.
Didn't know how much money he made, didn't know what he did. And it was uncomfortable. You could see Shams being like, how do these guys not know who this is?
Yeah, Shams was squirming.
It was really awkward. Really, really awkward. And then they were all arguing amongst themselves and ignoring shit. Like it was just an awkward thing.
Pat McAfee is an ideal fit for ESPN Plus, not the mainstream network. And ESPN made a mistake with that, in my opinion.
We'll see. We'll see. I love his show. I try to watch every day, but certain people.
We've watched every day for the last week, dude.
Certain people are partial to cow turd.
No, not cow turd. Screw cow turd. Screw that whole network.
We flip between Jim Rome and Pat. And I will admit, Jim Rome has been, when he doesn't do stupid interviews anymore. And Jimmy, I love you. I used to work for Jim Rome. Love you, dude, but too many writers, too many stupid interviews, too many dumb segments. And when he doesn't do that, his show's great. AAR, well, who sees Mr. Pat McAfee ESPN TV numbers? I mean, their YouTube numbers are phenomenal. So I have a hard time believing his TV numbers will be bad.
Yeah.
Vanity Fair, the bastion of sports journalism, Gumby says. Right. Ron Nolan, I will be on campus for the Pat Mac Show game day as well. Well, there's this too. The Mormon bombs that he has dropped on his show also are not comfortable for ESPN. And he continues to I'm not saying he's making fun of the Mormon community, the LDS community. He's not. But he just doesn't understand why it's uncomfortable. And Pat McAfee and Game Day are coming to Salt Lake City for Oregon and Utah.
Right.
And he's going to do his show from Salt Lake on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be interesting to see how all that plays out.
Yeah, I just think that Pat doesn't take it seriously enough. That's my biggest complaint.
Which means what?
What that means is that you don't understand that when you're going to partner with a major network like ESPN, and hey, the FanDuel thing was cool. I have no issue with FanDuel. I thought that the Pat McAfee show on FanDuel was fine. Cool. But if you're going to take that step up and go to ESPN and partner with them,
ESPN,
you got to understand you're in the major leagues now as far as TV networks are concerned with sports. And so when I say, hey, you don't take it seriously enough, I'm not talking about a shirt, even though I hate that he wears a tank top. I'm talking about the fact that you think it's okay to drop Mormon jokes or that you think it's okay to make Shams squirm because you don't know what the hell you're talking about with the NBA or, just these different details.
Yeah.
That matter. Like Pat McAfee's show is not a traditional sports talk show. They will say, okay, here's essentially their strategy is, oh, this thing happened. Let's just go around the room and tell me what you think about it. But that doesn't mean that you got to have an educated take. That doesn't mean that it's got to be anything wild. Just tell me what you think about it, and then we'll bounce off each other for an hour. and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back. That's what they do.
And do a big name guest.
Yeah, and then do like and it used to be 1. Now it's like 4. And I grow tired of that. Now, again, I'll also say on the other side of the coin, I'm there for Saban every single week.
You're there for Aaron Rodgers today.
Every single week. Like those guys, I'm there for. I'm there for. Yeah.
I would love to have Shams on my show.
Yes, dude. I love Shams.
Listen, I give Pat a lot of credit for what he's done. He's learning, though. He's young. He's naive. And I don't think he had any idea what he was getting into.
Totally agree.
Katie Rader, wreck 'em. Pew, pew. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your show. First round on me. Thanks, Katie. Appreciate you. Hope life is good in Katie. Jim Choi, why shouldn't Pat get special privileges? The man self-made his show, not these ESPN flunkies. There are no flunkies at ESPN, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, I think that if you have editorial guidelines, you should follow them. And when you make a deal with a guy like Pat McAfee, if you're not going to force him to follow your guidelines, you need to tell people that. And I think part of the problem is that there was not a lot of communication about Pat McAfee before Pat McAfee happened.
Right.
And I think that pissed some people off.
Yeah.